Every tree has roots, every life has branches, and every adoption has a story. Some stories begin with questions, some begin with loss. All of them are rooted in love and the search for connection. This is Janet Monroe, and this is Roots and Branches Adoption Stories, a podcast where real stories take root and grow. Because the more we share, the more we understand, and understanding helps us grow. Now, here's Janet Monroe.
Hello, and welcome to Roots and Branches Adoption Stories here at K-Fred Radio. I'm your host, Janet Monroe, birth mother, storyteller, and someone who believes that our roots shape us, but they do not have to define us. Today's episode is a very special one. It's not just one woman's story. It is the story of thousands. There was a time, not so very long ago, when young girls who became pregnant were quietly sent away from their schools, away from their friends, away from their neighborhoods, hidden from view so that no one would know. Many of these girls had little or no understanding of their own bodies. There was no real conversation about relationships, about sexuality, about consequences. There was shame, there was fear, and very often there were decisions being made for them. They were told what would happen, they were told what was best, and then they were told to move on. But what they were rarely told was that the memory of that child would stay with them for the rest of their lives. Today, we're talking about that experience. We're talking about what it meant to be pregnant back then. We're talking about loss, about silence, and about the courage it takes to speak many years later. We're also talking about something hopeful, reunion. Because for some women, the story does not end at adoption. Sometimes, many years later, there is a phone call or a letter or a knock on the door that changes everything. And just as important, we want to say this clearly. If you were adopted, it is okay to search for your biological parents, but it's also okay if you choose not to. There is no right or wrong, only what is right for you. Most importantly to the women who lived through this, what happened was not your fault. You were young, you were uninformed, you were shaped by a society that believed silence was the answer. Today, my guest is Nancy Harrison. Nancy's journey began as a teenage girl who found herself pregnant and sent away to a home for unwed mothers. Her daughter was adopted, but never forgotten. Her life went on, filled with both love and heartbreaking loss. And years later, that daughter reached out to find her. So this is a story of the strength, it's a story of the resilience, and it's a story that might help others finally find their voice. So Nancy, welcome to Roots and Branches. I am so glad that you are here today and that we get to talk about this because there's over 1.6 million young women that went through those homes for unwed mothers between the end of the Second World War and about 1973. And you are one of them, and you are telling that story. So there's a lot more out there to hear from, but everyone's story is different. So tell me, how did your life begin? Let's start at the beginning.
At the beginning. Oh,
Yeah.
goodness. Well, the beginning is, I guess, like you said, I found myself pregnant and had to share that information. I actually shared it with a teacher that I was close to start with. And of course, the teacher's all about, oh, yeah, that's fine. We can talk. And next thing I knew, my parents were getting a phone call.
Okay, so in the beginning, you were home, you had a stepmother that came into your life when you were about 5 years old.
Yes.
So, how did that shape how you understood closeness and family?
Well, there always seemed to be a bit of a wall between me and my stepmother, even though I called her mom, and I didn't know of any other woman as a mother, but I also knew that she wasn't my mother. She was my brother and sister's mother, but not my mother. But
So, there was a
so
bit of a disconnect there.
a bit of a disconnect there. Yes, there wasn't the bonding that she had with my brother and sister, and so there was. It could be all me, just the way that I felt because it was. I knew it wasn't my mother, but it could be both sides because
So,
she
your
knew
brother and
that.
sister were younger than you?
Yes, yes,
All
quite a
right.
bit. Yeah,
And
my
then they had the same father that you had.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
My father got me in the divorce, and actually, I lived with my father's parents until he remarried, and I was about just right at 5, I think, when they got married, and they brought me into that household, and then I got a new brother within the year.
Okay. So, back then, I know my parents, well, there was always talk about the birds and the bees,
Yeah,
and that was supposed to be the sexual talk and how what happens as far as sexual relations go. But
right.
when you think back to being a teenage girl in that era, what did you actually know about sex, pregnancy, and your own body?
I don't know that I really knew anything. I just knew that I had these feelings and I think more than anything, being accepted from the people I was around was more prevalent than my knowledge of what was going on. I mean, I knew that having sex would create, a child or could, but it didn't seem to be. I mean, we didn't talk about birth control. There was nothing like that even talked about in the household.
And I don't think there was any such thing as a condom back then.
Right. I don't know.
I'd never heard of it,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So, what were the unspoken rules for girls back then about dating, reputation, and what happened if you got in trouble?
Well, of course, then you were a bad girl, and it reflected against the family. So I'll never forget the first time after my parents knew that I was pregnant and deciding what the consequences and what the what was going to happen was being discussed. I remember my mom's had a very old friend that was her Avon lady that came to visit, and she didn't come very often. And mom sent me to my room, which was upstairs, and I was not allowed to come down until she was gone. So
Oh, okay, yes, I remember my mother's Avon lady as well, and I don't think I was around for any of those conversations. Hmm. I guess I should have
so
paid more attention.
yeah, exactly.
All right. So when you were in school, you were noticed by someone from the cool group,
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely.
How did that feel? How did it make you feel?
Well, I felt important, and it was even though I was kind of dating someone on a fairly regular basis already. There was, you know, no connection or plans for a future. nothing, there was never plans for the future. Everything was living for today. And when I got invited to a dance that was being held at some club, for mostly teens, but the club was actually rated, and that's how we ended up in the back seat of the car. But yeah, I felt really good about it. But um, after that was over, and I went home, and it was over. Then
It was that one night stand that we all hated.
yeah, exactly,
Uh,
exactly.
all right. When did you realize that you were pregnant?
Well, I was very regular in my period, so uh, practically immediately, within the 2 weeks, when my period didn't start, I pretty much knew already. And
Uh,
I don't know how I had the wherewithal or whatever, but I actually made an appointment with. I can't even remember how I would know this, but I made an appointment with the doctor that my parents took me to for whatever, and to find out. That was like, I don't even know how I knew to do that. you know
what was your very first thought? What went through your mind when you realized that you were pregnant?
that's a good question, and I don't know that I have an answer for it, because there was, the fear of, okay, what am I going to do now? But it was, I was in such a relationship with my parents that, even though I was the type person that, would sneak out and do things like that, I was the person that was the goody two shoes also. So my parents told me what to do, and I did it for the most part. You know, if I couldn't get away with it behind their back, so I never had a thought as to what was going to happen.
Yeah, my first thought was, how am I going to tell my parents?
Yeah, yeah. Well, my parents are, that exactly, and my parents found out through my telling my teacher. So
By telling your teacher.
yeah, so
So your teacher was the first person that you told,
yeah,
and they responded by calling your parents.
correct.
Would you have preferred to tell your parents yourself?
I don't know that I could have.
Okay. I can understand that because I had a really hard time telling my parents. And when it
Yeah,
came, I wanted to tell them both together, and I
yeah,
couldn't. I would go and I'd
yeah.
sit there and I'd look from one to the other, and I just couldn't do it. So I ended up telling my mom by herself, and then she had to tell my dad.
Well, my dad was actually out of town when my mom got the call, because my dad was in the oil industry, and he was out on a well at the time that mom got the phone call. So it kind of worked that way for me.
Okay, so what happened then?
um, Mom came and told me that, now she didn't know how to tell my dad.
Okay.
So, but of course, then she had to tell him, and when he got, I don't know if she actually waited until he got home, or when he called.
At that point, was there any discussion of options, or was the path already decided for you?
The path, there was never any discussion on options. It was kind of like, I'm going to put it along the scenarios of your grounded type scenario. Um, and then I was told that they were taking me, to this home so I could continue school. And then I also did night school. And I mean, I continued to follow through with my schooling, and did actually graduate from high school, through, like I say, going to night school, going to school through the home, and other things. But yeah, I was literally told this is what was going to happen.
Did you feel you had any voice in this choice?
And I was never asked to give a voice.
And that was probably the way for many people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like those were not things that you talk back, I guess, about.
No, so the homes for the unwed mothers, they were once very common. And as I said, it's approximately 1.5 million young pregnant women were sent away so their pregnancies could be hidden. They were cared for. They were also expected to place their babies for adoption and then
Yes.
return home as if nothing had happened.
Right.
So today we've got support programs that still exist, but the focus is much more on choice, on
Right.
counseling and helping mothers decide what is right for them. Um, but what was it emotionally like to be sent away from your normal life?
Well, I remember probably for the first week, every moment that wasn't involved in some activity that was required, I was crying. I cried for a week. I know, that's I just didn't know what else to do.
Um, so you arrived at this home for unwed. How many unwed mothers were there at the time that you were there? How big a home was it?
I'm going to guess it was a big 2-story house, and in the first room that you came into was kind of like a dormitory, and I think there was at least 8 people in that room, and then there were probably at least 8 rooms with double occupancies. I'm going to say about 30 people, maybe 30 women from all ages, and some a little younger, some a little older, some were there by choice, most were not, but yeah, some were actually even there by choice because of their circumstances, and they wanted to not be, you know, in the spotlight, I guess you could say.
Did you make friends with the other girls? What was your daily routine like?
Well, we had different chores that we did every day. During the school time, we did our schoolwork. There was we did a lot of activities, like they had people come in and do talks for us. Various different things. It could be like a Tupperware party or something like that, or even not too much on talking about our condition, though. It was more just different activities that, like crafts and things like that.
To
And we
keep
did
you
a lot
busy.
of, yeah, keeping busy kind of things. We did a lot of crocheting and knitting and things like that. That's where I remember one of my parents' relatives, not relatives, friends knew how to knit. And I remember just right before I was leaving to go to the house, the lady visited, but she was practically on her way out the door teaching me how to knit. And that was how I learned how to knit. But so I knit and crochet, and I still do it today. And so that was a good experience there. But that's one of the things that kept us busy, and we'd go for walks. And the area where the house was basically kind of a residential area, and but there was a store a few blocks away that we could walk to and get some snacks or something like that, or just to get away from the house and thing, things
So
like
it
that.
wasn't like you were in a jail. You had freedom to
Oh,
go.
oh yeah.
Okay. You said your parents visited you on weekends.
Yes, they would come on weekends, and we sometimes maybe go to the drive-in theater, and actually sometimes they would actually bring the boy that I was dating, not the father of the baby, but the boy I was dating at the time, and to go on these trips, which quite honestly is a little confusing, isn't it?
Yes. It sounds like it. Did your parents talk to you about your condition or about the baby, or was it something that they
It
kept to their
it really
distance?
wasn't brought up, just not, I don't remember what conversations we really had. It's just, you know, just being together, and I guess they were doing the best they knew how to do to be supportive. You know, mom made all the clothes that I took with me for the pregnancy, and you know, dresses and blouses and things. So
Yeah, my mom did the same. And I used to go home every Sunday
yeah,
for dinner, but my dad didn't really talk to me, and there was never any talk about my condition of the baby. It was just,
right.
I guess, being
Just the
supportive in the
everyday
way they could.
occurrences. Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
everyday kind of conversation. Yeah.
And I always wondered, actually wondered more after my dad passed away, um, whether he had not said anything because he felt responsible for it,
Hmm.
um, and didn't feel that he had taught me enough to be prepared to not go through something like that. Like,
Yeah,
did he feel,
that's a good thought. I never thought of that, but that could be very well. Yeah,
because I just think that maybe he felt responsible for it happening and didn't like the fact that they hadn't taught us enough that this
yeah,
happened, and because it was just the way it was, right?
yeah. Exactly, exactly. And I kind of find that in aging myself and looking back at how I treated my kids, you know, we all learn from what where we came from, and our parents did the same thing. I mean, they were just responding to what they learned, and so, you know, when are we going to get smarter parents?
um, I really can't answer that because life is changing so rapidly.
Yes, it is now.
Yeah.
Nowadays, there's so much more information out there, and yeah,
Yes, there
it's a
is.
totally different world than what it was back in the '60s and prior.
So back to your parents' visits. How did they affect you? Did they help you, or did they make it harder for you?
I think they helped. They made the transition especially better. So when the after the baby was born and I was sent home, um, that's another story. But
Okay.
you know,
You
um,
said they brought your boyfriend with you, that you had a boyfriend at the time. How did he
right.
feel about you being pregnant with someone else's child?
I don't know how he felt about it. He supported me, and actually, he and I, you know, married shortly after, about within 6 months after the baby was born, and but so he definitely supported me.
Did you feel that inside that home that you had solidarity with the other girls that were there, a sense that you were all in this together,
Oh
or was it
yes,
isolating?
no, it was not isolating at all. It was all like, you know, we always heard when somebody had a baby and what they had, and you know, and it was kind of like a family community. So
When
it was a
when
good experience for me.
Okay, so when someone had the baby and
Hmm.
you heard about it, did that person come back to the house, or did they
No,
just
no,
disappear?
they never came back.
And did you feel hidden in this house, or did you feel protected, or both?
I never got the impression of being hidden. I did feel protected, you know, because they had like a house mother that was always there, and you know, because there had to be somebody to run the place, I guess you could say.
Well, with 30 girls there, definitely.
Yeah,
You need
exactly.
somebody to keep them in line,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And like I
So
said,
you didn't have any
we
mean
had our
girls.
yeah, we had our chores. You know, we had to keep our rooms clean, and there were, you know, chores for breakfast and dinner that, you know, even though they had cooks come in, there's dishes to do and different things, and keeping that. I think I'm not sure each particular person might have had their own job, and there might have been jobs in cleaning of of the household, but it wasn't never my job, so I don't know.
Uh, so, what were you told about what would happen to you during the birth? Did anybody explain anything to you as to what to expect?
No, not really. It was we did have doctor visits, like once a week. The doctor would come, and depending on where you were in the pregnancy, as to whether it was your turn to go every, in the beginning you only went, like once a month, and then it would be every week or whatever. So through that, I guess there might have been some instruction or information provided through the doctors, and where, because they would tell us, where we were and what was, going on. But my birth came a little earlier than what I was told what my due date was, and I don't know if it was at that time because of my time framing and when I told them things were happening, or if it was because they didn't know it in those days close enough like they do today, as to when the due date was. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. So, what do you remember about the birth itself?
I remember screaming my head off. And it was quite painful. But
All
I
right.
do remember when I started in labor, I started walking, because that was one thing that we did know, that walking would bring it on better. And I started feeling the labor pains, and the person, whoever I was rooming with at the time, was with me, and we were timing them, and we got up and we went for walks, and we did, and it was like I was probably in that kind of labor in the household for maybe 8 hours before we decided it was time to go to the hospital, and went to the hospital around, I'm going to say around midnight night. And that was that was kind of unsettling, a little unsettling. Yeah.
When you went to the hospital, did you have to pack up everything that was yours in that house so that it could go with you?
No,
So,
I think what they did was they would pack it once because they didn't. You never know whether it was a real thing, or if you were going to end up coming back because the baby didn't get born. But I think they packed it up, and then I think my parents ended up picking it up afterwards. Everything that was there, because I don't remember ever going to retrieve it.
never going back.
Yeah.
Did you get to see your daughter and did you get to hold her?
I did. I actually did. And they gave us the option, so whether we wanted to or not. And I have no clue why I wanted to. I just felt like I would probably regret it if I didn't. And since that was an actual option that was given to me, I took it, So, and like everything else, nobody gave me the option for anything else. That was the only option that I really had.
How long were you in the hospital for yourself?
Believe it or not, 5 days. They kept you in 5 days.
And then you went home, but did your baby go home with someone else at that time, or was the baby
Yes.
still in the hospital?
I believe, from what I've been told, I think she went straight to her adoptive parents. Yeah. And it was really funny, from what they've told me, is that her adoptive father was in the Houston police force, and he was actually on security duty at that hospital the night she was born.
Let's see. How was the adoption presented to you? Was it something you were agreeing to or something that was simply happening?
I'm going to say something that just happened. I, I had to agree because I was told to.
Did you feel grief at the
Yes.
time?
Yes.
What was it like? to leave the hospital without the baby?
It was hard. Um, I've never been one to be able to express grief really very well. The majority of the way I express grief most of my life is just to talk it out. So if something's happened to me and you get close to me, you're going to hear about it. You're going to hear my story.
I'm pretty well the same, I think.
Hmm.
And I think mine stems from having that baby and kind of building all these concrete blocks around my heart so that
Yep.
I'm not affected by grief because of the
Yep.
loss.
Yep.
Um,
And Donna was born on October 1st, and in November, the date is not on the gravestone, so I don't know the exact remember the exact date. But in November of that year, my baby brother, who was 7 years old, was killed in a car accident. And when I came home from having Donna, I'm gonna say I became very close to that brother because he represented what I had lost. And then he was gone.
when you went back to your regular life, what did the people around you know? Like, know your mom and dad knew, your brother knew where you were and what was happening?
My brother and sister did not know what was happening. They just knew I was somewhere else.
So, how did you react around them when you went back?
Um, the same as always, because they were so much younger than I was. I really wasn't involved in their lives anyway. So it was just the youngest one that I was mostly involved with. So because my oldest younger brother is 8 years younger than I am. My sister's 9.5 years younger than I am, and then my baby brother was about 10 years younger than I am, 10.5 years younger than me. So
Now, you said you got married 6 months
mhm.
after the birth of your baby.
Yeah, because I got
You married
pregnant
at
again.
18 before finishing high school.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, again, I got pregnant with from the boyfriend then. So I mean, now I've had a baby. So, I mean, so of course we're active, I guess you could say.
All
And
right.
and so rather than and now I'm 18, and so rather than deal with anything else, we just went to the county courthouse and got married. He came
I
home and told our parents, and we ended up living with his parents for the time being because he was still living at home. I was still living at home, but his parents were gracious enough to let us stay with them. And
let you stay with them because you didn't want to go back to the home and go through the same thing you just been through.
right, exactly, exactly.
And because he knew what you had gone through because he was visiting you in that home,
Yeah,
then
exactly.
it made sense to have
Yeah,
that get married and have the baby together, right?
right, right. And this was his, so he was. That's
So
what it was.
becoming how did becoming a mother again affect your feelings about the child that you had lost to adoption? Was
You
this a
know,
replacement?
I probably, but when they told me at the adoption agency when I signed the papers that when you know now that you've signed this, this is just something you need to forget about. You just don't even because you're never going to hear from them. You're never going to. This is closed adoption. Um, you might as well just forget this ever happened to you in your life. And so I can't say that I forgot it, but I put it on the shelf and didn't let it affect me to the degree of how it the next but it did because Now I couldn't be close to anybody, you know, because and especially when, I lost her, and then a month and a half later I lose my baby brother who I'm so close to. Yeah, the walls went up completely.
How do you
So
feel
I
the
never,
other
yeah.
you were around at the home and there was other girls that were going through something similar to you? Did they
Mhm.
close off their feelings as well, or was it just a combination of everything for all of them? Was there a lot of different
Y-
feelings? And
You know, that's really hard to say because of the fact that, because this was, like you said, a situation of, you know, a, a hidden scenario. We were not able to or allowed to continue relationships beyond there. So we never, once you were gone, you were gone. So none of those relationships were ever continued.
of course, it was different back then because nobody had cell phones and you couldn't get a number and you
Right.
couldn't text and you
Yeah,
couldn't.
exactly. We had payphone. We had a payphone that we could make calls out, but nobody could call us, So
You you had a second daughter that you lost to spinal meningitis at 2.5 years
yes,
old.
yes, that was
So
the
then you're
third.
carrying about both those losses.
Hmm. Yeah.
So did your the two griefs ever really touch each other in your own mind, or were they totally separate?
I think they were totally separate because they were two different scenarios. One child I knew, the other I didn't. So when Amanda passed, she was 2.5. She was my third child, so my second that I was raising, and smart. Oh my goodness, she was so smart. That child, she spoke in full sentences at 11 months old. Just smart as a whip. But so that was very hard. And I actually had my fourth child, which was my second son, when she passed, and he was right at a year old when she passed. And he's the one that I'm closest to because when she passed, he was still in diapers and needing a mother's attention and affection and stuff. And he became my focus. And so my oldest son kind of got ignored, and which has made it difficult all these years, um, because the relationship between me and my second son, um, is the only son or only child that I had that I actually had a bond with. So
Did you kind of did you give yourself time to process your grief for your daughter,
who has time?
or
My parents didn't live anywhere close by. I had no support system. Who has time? You
okay?
know,
Did you feel you had to be strong for everybody else?
always, yeah,
Why is
always.
it women carry all the weight?
I don't know. That's a good question. That is a good question, but yeah, yeah, and I can't even say that. I don't know where that came from in my mind. It's just like my always needing to be on time, if not early, for an appointment. Um, it bothers me tremendously to not be on time for something, and being on time is 30 minutes early. Where did that come from? You know, where
Was
where
that
did the
something your
fact that
parents
I
drilled
had to
into
be,
you?
huh?
Was that something your parents drilled into you?
I have no idea. I have no idea. It's just
Yeah,
something I've always known about myself, and I don't understand people that can be late,
I don't either. My husband was a stickler for being on time for
Yes.
everything, and I think that stuck with me. And I don't like it when people are late. And yet, I have
Yes.
some people in my family that don't mind being late.
I do too, and it's kind of like, how do you just live with yourself doing that? But it
I
is. I
know.
mean, Yeah.
And I tell my grandson when I'm going to go pick him up, okay, be ready for me to come,
Right.
because I don't. You might have all the time in the world ahead of you, but I don't have much time left, so I don't want to waste any of it.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. But
Yeah.
and so like you said, how do women feel like they? I don't know, but I did feel like I had to be strong because nobody else was there to be strong for me or with me.
So during all these years, when you've been married and having your family and more children, did you
Mhm.
think about your firstborn, or was it something that you just let yourself feel, or did you just push it away?
I mean, I didn't not acknowledge it. I did acknowledge it. And, if the topic was ever in conversation of some kind of way, I didn't mind telling my story. But it didn't come up that often because I did have other children and being married. And, it just wasn't something that literally, my high school years just never really came up. So, but if they did, I didn't mind sharing. I don't mind sharing at all.
Yeah,
I,
I didn't tell my story at all. My husband knew. I told
yeah,
him before we got married that the story, but I never shared it with anybody else.
yeah.
Uh,
I've always been an open book. It's what you see, what you get. And there's there of course are always things. Everybody's done something they don't want to discuss, but and so there are things in my life that I actually probably did discuss with a few people, but not that much. And but for the most part, you either like me or you don't. I do care, but but there's nothing I can do one way or the other.
I agree with you totally. You like somebody, they like you or they don't. So uh,
Yes.
it's not going to affect the rest of our lives, right? You and I were
Right,
both the same
exactly.
age, so
Especially
we
and
know
the older you
exactly
get,
where we are.
yeah, yeah, and the older you get, the easier that becomes.
Definitely. Uh, now, your daughter reached out to you at the age of 21, and
Mhm.
I'm guessing that was at the point when at closed adoptions she was able to find information out about you. But
I think she was able to prior to that, but I think they encouraged them to wait till they were 21. I think her adoptive parents also encouraged that, but she always wanted to know who I was.
all right, so how did you find out about that?
Well, yeah, right through the adoption agency, they actually did the search for her and found me. And I don't know how many letters they sent out or how many people or if it was just me. I don't know, but I got a letter on a Friday afternoon from the agency um, stating that if I was this person and or that person and what have you, then they needed to talk to me. So I
When you
waited until
first opened
Monday.
that letter and read it,
Yeah.
what kind of emotions came flooding back?
Oh, it was such excitement in thinking that it it was possibly my daughter reaching out to me or some kind of news from her, and to not know for the whole weekend was just like antagonizing. And even though my husband knew about it, it was like you say, it was something you were that was told and then not discussed, you know. So to get that letter in the mail and read it and then say, oh wow, and then have a but he was there to support me and it was good.
Your husband was supportive of it?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so then Monday comes along and you get to make
Yes.
that phone call.
Yes, yay.
And what happened from there?
Well, that they told me that my daughter was reaching out for me and was I open to meeting, and if I was, that there was a criteria that they went through in order to make sure that it was a good meeting. And what they did was they actually had us write letters to one another and send pictures to one another, and explain to each other, where we were at the time of the adoption, why, for me, why I was open to meeting her. For her, it was why she wanted to meet me. And I still have those letters from when she sent them to me, and it was awesome. And then after, I think it was 3 letters and a couple of counseling sessions, they let us all come together, and I was able to bring my two of my sons, and my husband came and met her at the time and she brought her parents, and her mother's best friend, I think, was there. And she actually has a brother that was adopted, and her brother's older than her. And but I didn't get to meet Floyd until later on. But so we all got to meet, and it's pretty cool.
Was there anything specific that you wanted her to know about you?
I wanted her to know that it wasn't my choice, I guess. But when her adoptive parents raised her from the time of her remembrance, they always told her that her mother gave her up to give her a better life. And in reality, I guess that's true, because even though it wasn't my choice, it is what happened.
And she had very loving adoptive parents.
They were incredible people. I really do. I appreciate them more than anything. And even to this day, her adoptive father has now passed, and I still I'm in contact with her adoptive mother, and every time her mother always thanks me. She says, "Thank you for the gift."
So was there relief, grief, or something more complicated when you met her?
I'm going to say more relief than anything, knowing that she had a good life. I have to say, it took me almost, you asked earlier, did I take the time to grieve for my daughter? After I met Donna, that's when my grieving started. And I was able to let go of a lot of grief at that time, because at that time, you know, my family was older. They were able to function on their own. Even though I was involved in everything, it wasn't as if I was needed, so to speak. And I was able to take time and literally, I'm going to say it took me a long time to finally, the thoughts of, why didn't I get to be the first person, the person there when she walked the first time? Why couldn't I be the person that was there when she talked? Why wasn't I the person that raised her? All those things started flooding in, and then all of a sudden, having lost Amanda and all of that, it all just kind of flooded and came together. So that was when I was able to grieve.
I know the feeling. When my son told me he had 3 children and 5 grandchildren, that just blew my mind
Yeah,
because I'd missed out on all this. And
yeah,
it took me a long time to realize that I wouldn't have the life that I had today if I had kept him and raised him, and he wouldn't have
right,
had the life that he had.
exactly.
So it takes a long time to get over that. I think
Yes, it does.
it
I think it almost took 2 years for me to really work through all of it.
yeah, it doesn't go away in minutes. It's once you hear it,
No,
it just it it's powerful. It's like a tsunami hitting you. All these feelings and all these memories of what actually happened back then and how it
yeah,
ended up the adoption. and just everything you had to think about. And though you had support, you didn't have any chance to discuss
Well,
anything. There was nobody to talk
right,
to about it.
exactly, because I totally, my mother was the type person, mother being stepmother, but nonetheless, she was the person that, in her mind, you just got over things. You don't have, there's no need for psychiatrists or psychologists or anybody to talk to. And it was a shame that she felt that way, because it caused a lot of grief later after our brother died, for my other brother and sister, because they lost their mother when Stanley died. It was so devastating to her, when he died, that she no longer was functioning as a mother to the other two children she had. I was already gone from the house, so it wasn't so much for me. But for the other two children, um, they lost their mother at that time. So it's a shame that she didn't understand that there was help, and therefore I didn't have the help. But you work through it, and some people get through it, and some people don't. I don't know. God is good. He's been good to me.
How has your relationship with Donna evolved since that first contact?
It's evolved good. When we first met, we did a lot of things together. I had a big barbecue with my husband had children, and I had children, and we had grandchildren, and we had everybody over, her parents and my parents, and had a huge picnic barbecue and everything for everybody to get to know each other. Um, Don and I were invited to on several panels from the adoption agency to talk about the relationship, and why Donna reached out to me, why I allowed it, what good ways and bad things that can happen in coming together. Um, it just it was pretty cool, to and we went on a couple of trips together, and then I was there when Donna's children were born. Um, uh, my parents were invited to her wedding, so she had her dance with her grandpa at her wedding, and so it was just like a rebirthing, I guess, within the family, and it worked out really good. And as time went on, because we live in the Houston area, and Donna lived way south and I lived way north, our lives kind of went our own direction. We're still, we still talk to each other, um, but we're not as close as we were in the beginning. But it's okay, because we needed that closeness to start with. And then I was able to come to grips, I guess you could say, with the fact that, you know, she had the life that God wanted for her, and I've had the life that God wanted for me.
I
And
think
it
that's a
was,
perfect way to put it.
so, and, I'm in the process right now. If you saw behind me, there's boxes everywhere around here, because I'm about to move back to the Houston area. And I truly feel like, even though our relationship has drifted some, I feel it coming back. And I think this move back is I'm going to be as close, if not closer to her than ever now, because I think that she's in a different place in her life now, that she has more time to be able to devote. And I know that she feels bad sometimes when things happen, with her brothers that are on the north side of town, and that she's unable to be there for them, so to speak, because she does relate to the fact that she's got, three brothers from me, and then her birth father had another son, and so she has another brother there. So she's got tons of brothers, no sisters.
No sisters. All right. So, for the women that are listening who went through the same thing that you and I have been through and have never spoken about it, what would you say to them?
Well, if you haven't gotten help, get help, because it's something that happened in your life and you need to acknowledge it.
How is it? How important is it for the birth mothers to be allowed to share their stories openly?
I think it's very important. And I think it's important for more reasons than for just the birth mothers. It's important. And it's important because there's so many women out there today that are considering abortion. And there's so many women out there today that feel like, this is my body. I can do what I want. Well, yeah, you did what you want. But no, that's not that baby is not your body. And if you don't want to raise that child, then there are good options out there. And there are so many women out there that want a child and can't have one. It needs to be brought up so more people would have either the ability to raise a child that wasn't birthed by them, but in another. And there's so many options today, with the open adoptions and being able to know, what's going on if you want to, and you don't have to. That's the
Right.
thing. It's there's so many options more today to make it where, and there's so much. I'm going to call it counseling, but whatever to go along with it today than what we had before. We didn't have anybody to help us understand what was going on, and today there is, and it's so important to find those resources and utilize them.
What would be your perspective for adoptees that are wondering whether or not to search for their biological parents?
Well, I would say for the most important reason to do it would be for medical reasons, because you don't know what your genealogy could be. Um, and granted, the because of the advances in scientific research is changing, the need for all of that, just to have a background knowledge of what type of history your family had can be beneficial to your future, your health, and what you expect in life. As far as emotional, um, it's everybody's preference. It's everybody's preference. If you're, because sometimes I think children that are adopted, maybe they're mad, maybe they feel like they were thrown away, but I would think that they need to know. They need to know.
And last question I'm going to ask you is, if you could go back and speak to your 17-year-old self,
Hmm.
what would you tell her today?
So
Oops.
why just I would just, why didn't you ask more questions? Why couldn't you have been stronger then, like you are today?
But as
I
we
don't
said,
know.
if we made different choices back then, our lives would be different.
Absolutely, they would have. But would they be better or would they be worse? Who knows?
I don't know.
But
I'm quite happy with
I
the life that I've led.
yeah.
I look back on it and I'm content.
Mhm.
And I think you are as well.
At this point, yes, I'm to the age. I think either I'm content or I'm going to be really miserable.
Well, we can't change it, right? So we have to look back
Exactly,
and be content.
exactly. So yeah. So I'm gonna be 100% content and grateful for the fact that God brought me through it all, regardless, one way or another. And that, having faith was not always there for me. But since I've had faith, I understand God was there from beginning to end. And without that, I don't know where I'd be.
I agree with you totally on that. So, Nancy, thank you for your courage today. Stories like yours matter more than many people realize. Because behind every quiet adoption story from years gone by, there is a young girl who is trying to figure out life with very little guidance. As we close this episode, I want to speak especially to the young women who may be listening. Love and attraction are powerful feelings. Wanting to belong, wanting to be noticed, wanting to feel grown up. These are real emotions. But becoming pregnant is not just a moment. It's not just a situation to get through. It's something that can shape your life and heart for many years to come. If you're not ready to become a parent, protect yourself. Make sure that any sexual relationship is responsible and safe. Do not allow yourself to be pressured into something you are not prepared for. And remember, if a young man is not willing to share responsibility, you deserve to question how much he truly cares. Because when a pregnancy happens, the decisions that follow, whether that is abortion, adoption, or raising a child, can have lifelong emotional effects. There is no path that leaves you unchanged. So tonight is not about creating fear. It's about creating awareness. It's about helping young women make informed choices and helping older women understand that their stories still matter. And if you are listening tonight and feel that you have a story to tell, I would love to hear from you. You can connect with us through our website at www.rootsandbranchesadoptionstories.com, or you can call or text me directly at 615-870-6433. This has been Roots and Branches Adoption Stories at KFred Radio. I'm Janet Monroe. Thank you for listening. And remember, our roots shape us, but they do not define us.
Thank you for tuning in to Roots and Branches Adoption Stories, where every tree has roots, every life has branches, and every adoption has a story. Got an adoption story you want to tell? Want to learn more about adoption stories? Then visit rootsandbranchesadoptionstories.com.